He's so Vaeni. He's so Vaeni.
Aloha, ladies and germ gents. I am Jeremy Vaeni, and a funny thing happened on the way to this episode, which is that, remember last episode was about Elon Musk, and I went off on a little old man tirade, get off my lawn, you kids, about someone saying, why don't you pick on Elon Musk, stop picking on people with like 50 to 70 view counts, or whatever the quote was. Well, that person actually responded to me and said, no, they meant that as a jibe at someone else, or a jab, or what's the less violent of the two? Whatever the less violent of the two. I'm sure they meant that. At someone else in the comments thread who was picking on me about something. So they actually meant like, hey, troll, why don't you go pick on somebody with way more views than he's so vain has. The point is, I ended up doing an Elon Musk video for no reason. But that's reason enough, frankly. This week, however, I make up for that because someone, and I would say your name, but I don't know if you want people to know your name. So someone has asked me to review a video from someone who goes by Suzanne Non-duality. This is, the video is called "The True Cost of the End of Suffering is Rarely Shared." So this person didn't ask me to view this specific video, but just any video, and would like my thoughts on what I think about what she has to say. So I picked one at random that sounded cool. Let's listen in on what Suzanne Non-duality has to share with us.
I can't quite remember clearly, but I don't remember anyone really emphasizing in detail how everything goes. Like
everything. This ought to be something. I haven't watched this video, by the way, so let's see what everything means.
Every last bit of the dream goes. Of the illusion of me. Of a separate entity moving in time, in a world. Having relationships with other people. Seeing value, meaning, having purpose in their life, reasons why they're living. All the hope for the future, all the memories of the past that mean so much to me.
Jesus, Eeyore, could you pick it up? Sorry, I had to.
And all of it goes. So not only does the suffering and the intense burden of life go, but also the pleasures, the attachments, the meaning, the relationships, the desires, the wants, eventually all of it goes. There is nothing here for you because you don't exist.
So far, I guess, fair enough.
So really the care and the want for anything in this world, it goes. And it simply just is what it is. It's not a thing for me to have for myself. It isn't an idea to achieve or get for myself, to fulfill myself. It isn't a relationship to add more meaning to my life, to provide greater fulfillment, more excitement, more adventures with this individual. And all of those pleasures come with the pain. It comes with the suffering. Scratch that. Pain still arises here. It has a very different sense to it. So all of the personal stuff, it goes. So the opposites go. The good and the bad, all of it, not just the bad.
So I don't know if she's going to get to this or not, but a couple of things. Since this is called The True Cost of the End of Suffering, I would say that what she's talking about, if this is what she's talking about as the cost of, why can't I remember this title? The True Cost of the End of Suffering, is that the good goes with the bad. That's not a cost, if that's where she's going with this, because that's the kind of thing that may feel like a cost, kind of like, when I talk about nothingness, and then some people find that fearful, like, oh, nothingness, nothing. Like, the thing that you imagine that it is what causes the fear. The thing that you imagine as the cost of ending suffering, which is its opposite of joy, beauty, whatever, goes out the window too. That's not a cost, because from the other side of that, those things are immediately irrelevant. And it's not as though like joy and beauty and love and all that actually leave. It's that they you live and feel what they actually are in their fullness. So no longer are they merely swinging on a pendulum attached to their opposites. True love has no opposite. True beauty has no opposite. True joy has no opposite. It's only the way that we treat them, as she's saying, these illusory self-senses, that is that dysfunctional. But again, from the other side, there's no cost. I mean, I'm trying to think of what an analogy would be, but there just is none. I mean, I'm sure there's an analogy, but there's no cost. So there's that. All right, let's go back.
The person is so desperate for just the bad to go, just the suffering. And that's what's emphasized, really. That this is the way to end suffering. This is the way to end seeking.
What is she talking about? What is the way to end? I hope she gets to that, because I feel like she's skipping over some big things here that are like the connective tissue.
And it's never clearly put out there that it comes with a territory. Like, it's two sides of the same coin. All of it goes. Nothing remains. Here there's nothing. Well, everywhere there's actually nothing, but you might feel like there's actually something happening. That there's meaning and value to things, you, life, everything, this relationship, this achievement.
Well, there kind of is meaning to life for us. And that meaning is to see what she claims she's explaining, what she claims she's seeing, or I guess living, but to become, essentially for the brain to shut the self-sense off so that we understand ourselves and live the point of view of truth, which is inclusive of that which was just shut off. So in other words, the meaning of life, such as it is really about finding our full wholeness, full actual human nature, not the suffering and the back and forth of duality between suffering and happy times, but to turn that off, or for that to be turned off through the act of seeing the futility of being that in the world. so that truth becomes the first person identity of the body, which is another way of saying that is that timelessness becomes the first person identity of the body, and that's how it projects into time. That's how timelessness becomes the first person experiencing of time, if that makes sense. That would be the meaning, but she's right in terms of like all the stuff that we do prior to that, and most of us never get to that. Therefore, most of us are pretty freaking meaningless. Yeah. However, that meaninglessness that where most of us are, the overwhelming majority of people are living, that you're living right now, you listening and watching this, is the necessary case. So in other words, there's no getting rid of that per se. All that can be expressed will be expressed, because nothingness, she's talking about nothingness as though it's just this depressing emptiness is what it sounds like to me. But nothingness is really the indication of consciousness prior to and inclusive of all things. And so in that sense, all things that can arise will arise, right? Let's just put it that way. And one of those things is what we are, which is this divorced, screwed up, separate self sense. The question is, do you have to be the one expressing that? Do you have to be the one expressing that? It will be expressed through other people or whatever the case is, but do you have to be the one expressing that? Or can you personally step out of it? And not you step out of it. Again, this is where language trips me up. Even me in all of my Vaeni glory.
He's so vain.
Yes, I am. It's not you. It's the body, the brain, sees the futility of the self. And in that moment, stops projecting the self. And in that moment, consciousness prior to and inclusive of that body, the self-identity of that consciousness becomes the case when the blockage that is you is out of the way. Okay. Maybe she'll get to that, or maybe she doesn't really know that. Let's find out.
And my sister is so wise, because I mentioned this to her, and she said that a part of her knew this, that that's why there were some organizations or centers that just emphasized being a person, but learning how to be more present or be more mindful, have a better experience as a person, learn how to be a more peaceful person. And for
the irony of her talking about being a peaceful person as like sirens are blaring in the background, not lost on me. Just throwing that out there.
For her, that was more of interest than the whole way, the whole shebang, the whole no self, the disappearance of everything. And I thought that was very smart of her. Not that this is bad. This just is. It's not good or bad. It's utter neutrality.
Is it utter neutrality? Because let's back up to something she said toward the beginning that I glossed over, which was, she's sitting here in a graveyard, and I just realized that. She said that there's still bad stuff in the world. Like, you remember she said, oh, scratch that. No, there's still pain and suffering, but it takes on a different form or something along those lines. But she never said what that is. Again, she's saying it without saying it, which is not helpful when your whole gig here is saying it. And so it leads me to believe that she doesn't know the it, that she's not saying. And in that instance, the it is that what the pain and suffering transforms into is compassion, because you are that. Like you know, in a sense you could say, like, I just was you. I mean, this is the way I feel about people. If you want, like, my not veiny honesty, is like I look at people who are in pain or cause pain, and even the trolls, like, you know, like I interact with trolls and I get offended and stuff like that. And on the one hand, but on the other hand, which is at the exact same time, I understand them, you know, like it both bothers me and doesn't bother me at the same time. So if that's neutrality, that sounds like I've got conflict more than neutrality in that sense. But you do understand, like, I get where you're coming from. I was you once, and I still am. And that's the part that is causing me a bother, is like, I know what we are, at least to the extent, you know, can I know what's beyond what I know? As Donald Rumsfeld might have said, no, I can't know what is beyond what I know. I can't know what is beyond my experience. But my experience is, I just know from talking to people more than what people, or fuller. I don't want to say more, like hierarchically more, but it's just a more complete sense of, we're not even on the right same page here with what, like, human nature is. So whatever the wholeness of human nature is, I may not have experienced that, but I for sure have experienced enough and am enough to know that it ain't this thing here that we're all talking about and living. So you have compassion for those who, because you are them, right? Like you were that blind, and probably I'm blind to something else, but we'll just keep the conversation this way, which is like, you are them and you were in that position and you understand. And I'm not sure what the neutrality is she's talking about, because I can say that in the beginning, I experienced that nirvana blissed out sense of like hyper, holy crap, like, you know, we're all one. This really, like, the liberation of it, the liberation moment of the oneness in the interconnecting nature of all things, the liberation of self-identifying as that, which flushes away your psychological baggage, whatever is left over from what you haven't dealt with. Because you got to flush away some of your psychological baggage to even approach this stuff in the first place, I think. So it all goes, in that moment lasts, when I say moment, it lasted up until I dragged myself back into quote unquote normalcy. And I've talked about this before. It was simply that I had a friend, it was before 9/11, and I had a friend who wanted to do a political show, and he wanted me to host it, and he wouldn't do it unless I said yes. Otherwise, he wouldn't do it at all. And I was Mr. Blissed Out Guy, and I didn't care. But part of being Mr. Blissed Out Guy is like, again, this sense of you got to give up your joy and all. No, like, everything was joy. Like, it didn't matter what my job was at that point. Like, I had career goals. I had things I wanted to do in life, and those were kaput. Those were gone. So I didn't drop them. I didn't stop working in television, or I didn't stop doing what I was doing because the goals left. It's not like a depression. It's the opposite. It's liberation. And so you can now do anything. I could have been a janitor, or I could have been a CEO, and I would have been completely happy doing either of those or anything in between. So you don't stop your life. You just aren't controlled by the desire to become, if that makes sense. But you still need to, like, be in the world and act in the world and do something for a living, right? Like, because that's the world we've set up. Of course, had I gone and lived in a cave, then I could have gone and lived in a cave. But there's no striving to do that. There's no resistance to the life that I've already built. And I think when we imagine non-duality or so-called enlightenment or whatever, we imagine that that you drop that, you've got to drop all your friends, your family, you got to push away all the negative energy, all the new age stuff is just not true. So anyway, that's kind of who I was up until that moment. And because I had no want to be a host of a show, but I also had no not want. What my want was, such as it was to help my friend who said he wouldn't do it if I didn't do it. If I said no. If I said no, that door shuts for him. And I wanted him to fulfill whatever it is he needed to fulfill through doing that. So I said yes, even though I had no want to do it. I didn't really have time. And that actually ended up dragging me back in shortly after that 9/11 happened, and then the dynamic of what the show was going to be changed and all that. And that sort of dragged me back into normalcy to the extent that I am now still normal. Not happy. Maybe, as she would say, neutral. I don't know. But I don't know. Let's just go on with this.
And you might see this face that smiles when it's expressing, but most of the time it's not smiling like this. It's just sitting.
So,
there's no more real excitement in life. There's no more, oh my God, I can't wait to do that. I can't wait to meet these people and do these things, and that goes.
Yeah, that's true. She's right. That goes. But again, I don't know why this is a cost. Why is she setting this up as a cost of ending suffering?
Eventually it all goes.
I mean, isn't that like saying, like, the cost of being an adult is that you no longer fake fight with imaginary friends, right? Like, that's kind of what I used to spend my time doing. Like, I was in the Hall of Justice or something, or I was, in the Star Wars, shooting it out. Whatever I was doing as a kid, imagining, like, that's all well and good as a kid, but, eventually you grow out of that. And it's just natural to grow out of that. So, how is that a cost? It just is the natural state of not being a child anymore.
But that, living in time, living in the idea of things, of happenings, it is what causes the suffering. It is what veils this. Just the immediacy of this. Just the simplicity of everything as it is, without an idea of what it is, without a concept or meaning or value or interpretation or understanding of what this is. It just is. It's the absence of time, absence of space, absence of me, mine, the absence of ownership of everything. And yes, the mind can be torture sometimes, and that is a big relief. It is. The burden of life was so heavy. For an individual to feel the burden of life, that is so heavy. It really is. And sometimes it's not that noticeable, because perhaps the body's used to it. But when it goes, it's really remarkable to see how much burden was on this body.
Okay. So I'm going to stop it here for your benefit, because unless she gets to how this is a cost, I'm going to keep watching and see if we ever get to how this is a cost, and then we'll see. But I'll just do that. Let me just look And I'll finish this off, and then if anything strikes my fancy, I'll come back and share it, and if not, we'll wrap this up. Okay, yeah, so I watched it, and she pretty much just reiterates herself, and then gets into that all of this is a play, that all of this is fake. Like your life is it's an illusion, and all the illusion that goes with that. History, the fact that people claim to know things and they don't know anything at all. Nothing that I disagree with necessarily. So definitely finish this video on your own and watch it. I feel like watching this, she's most likely an honest person and trying to relate this stuff. So I don't fault her in any way for any of this. And I think that some of the stuff is good to hear. But ultimately, I think presenting the fact that you realize that there is that life and death are one, and there is no separation, all that, presenting it as though it's a stagnant picture that is devoid of it seems like any feeling at all. I mean, it almost sounds nihilistic, or like something that U.G. Krishnamurti, not to be confused with Jiddu Krishnamurti, but U.G. Krishnamurti might have said, which always struck me as U.G. Krishnamurti, not Nietzsche. U.G. Krishnamurti always struck me as somebody who intellectually got it, but never lived it. And I'm not saying that that's necessarily the case with her. I'm saying that whatever she is living and experiencing is still missing something. And I think she thinks it's not, if that makes sense. And the thing that's missing is the aliveness, the livingness of the whole so-called illusion, the necessary illusion, the things that are oneness, consciousness per se, God without the baggage, and not divorced from the creation. Whatever word it is that you want to use, it is that being. Being what? Being alive. Being different from oneness. Being separate entities. And you're both. You're not one or the other. You're both. So can you be self-consciously both? Can you be the self-consciousness of that bigger picture, which contains the self-consciousness of the little picture that you're living as now? And it sounds like what she's saying is like that bigger consciousness picture is neutral, is sort of stagnant. I mean, she makes it sound like a dead fish. It's not. So I got an issue with that. But hey, give it a go, listen to it, and you tell me what you think. Maybe it speaks to you differently, what she's saying here. And let me know. All right, this was almost a positive He's So Vaeni experience, right? Like, we could do this. It doesn't have to always be me sniping at people for saying stupid things, right? Or in the event that I'm wrong, me like being Homer Simpson that I don't know that I'm wrong, and I'm like, yeah, everyone else is stupid, not me. Like, maybe I'm doing that too. How are you to know? You're a fool, or you wouldn't be watching this. So don't listen to me, don't listen to her. Just sit for a moment and be silent and see if silence becomes you, and then you'll see just how neutral or not you are, if you exist at all. Which, if you do it right, you won't. But if you do anything at all, you're doing it wrong, so you will. So probably just ignore all of this, and I'm sorry on your behalf. I wish, frankly, you had this time back, but you don't. So thanks for being here, and, do you come back for more? I don't know. I mean, how masochistic are you?
He's so very